What's going on, PGM fam? Welcome back to another episode with the power of a growth mindset. Today, we are joined by another very special guest. We are joined by Dr. Bannavti. Now, she has a wide range of awards. She's got a number of things going on with her own personal research that we're going to be diving in today. But of course, I do want to highlight she is a University of Iowa graduate with her Master's of Science and PhD in Civil and Environmental Engineering, where she categorizes PCBs, which we will get into very shortly, for schools. Now, she also has a BS in Natural Resources from Delaware State University, and she is also doing some work over at MIT with the Celine and Gushwin group. Now, Doc, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. My hands are sweaty.
Well, no need. Look, we're gonna relax. We're gonna have a good time. This is what it's all about. So get comfortable. Just enjoy being here. We are very excited. Yeah, go ahead and roll the shoulders. We're very excited to have you on the show today. And I know we connected. What was that? Back in September. It's been a little
November.
bit. November. See, I'm already losing track of days. We connected back in November at Afrotech, and I know I had a chance to hear a little bit about what you had going on, but we know that there are a number of things that we want to just hear and break down in today's episode. But of course, we love to start our episodes with a mental health check-in. And so we want to start by asking you, how are you doing? It's a new year.
Yeah.
And so, how are you doing when it comes to just personally, professionally? Maybe you've set some goals. Let us know what's going on in your world. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. Hallelujah. Thank the Lord. This is a good mental health day because 2024 came out the gate swinging. Swinging.
Absolutely.
I was like, what is this? Like, literally, I kid you not, New Year's Eve to like January 2nd, I was on a high. I was like, this 2023 was great. 2024 is about to be better. Like, yes, pass me the shots. And then for some January 3rd, it was like my plane came crashing down. And I was like, literally, I don't want to call it depression, but I was like in a state of sadness for like 2 weeks. And I like just got out of that. So I feel really great today. Thank the Lord so I can come here and bring y'all my best self. But yeah, 2024 didn't start off easy.
Let's unpack that just briefly real quick because we want to know because folks, especially our audience, some people may have also had a very similar experience where they came out the gate swinging, and we're what, 3 weeks into 2024, and it's like the heck is going on. So as much as you want to share, what has been going on? Like, I know you mentioned you're a little bit depressed, but like, how have you been overcoming that? How have you been dealing with some of like the highs and the lows, especially as you kind of entered this year?
Yeah, well, you know what I think it is? I'm a Christian. I love the Lord. And so the beginning of the year is always 21 days of prayer and fasting for me and for a lot of my other like church community. And where there is fasting, there's warfare. Hey, okay. So
Yes,
I
yes.
genuinely feel like that has a lot to do with it. I think that whenever you are separating yourself from worldly things to like focus on God, then the devil gets busy
Hmm.
because he's like, no, 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 I don't like that, especially when there's a community of believers all across the world doing it at the same time.
Yep.
So I know from talking to like my church, like belong groups and stuff like that, that like a lot of other people were also feeling the same way. And then it was actually my youth leader that pointed that out and was just like, well, we're in a period of consecration. And whenever you're in that sort of period, then the devil gets busy. But it's so easy to feel overwhelmed if
Mm,
you're type A like me, if you're a planner, if you're a big achiever, you have so many goals, you see so much for your future. The new year
Hmm.
is exciting because you're like, I get to do it all over again. Hallelujah, thank the Lord, I can do it better this time. But at the same time, it's you put a lot of pressure on yourself, a lot of
Hmm.
undue pressure on yourself to like be better over the course of a day. Like everybody's like, January 1st, I'm gonna start eating healthy. January 1st, I'm gonna go to the gym. January 1st, I'm gonna, pray 5 times a day. It's like, okay, wait, pause. Like a year is made up of days.
Hmm.
So, you take a step back instead of overwhelming yourself and giving yourself anxiety and say, a year is made up of days. So, what are the things I'm going to do on the daily to accomplish the goals that I have throughout the year?
mm.
And shout out to TikTok. People talk a lot of crap about TikTok. I love TikTok. One of the things that the girlies on TikTok taught me was to start looking at the year in quarters. So I don't even have goals for 2024. I have goals for Q1. And
Hmm.
so And it lines up perfectly because I make my New Year's resolutions with my birthday, which is September 30th, the last day of Q3. So it goes perfectly for me. So I think also breaking the year up into quarters has helped me a lot. Smaller goals, less overwhelming, a better chance that I'll actually like accomplish something. And then that starts to like get you out of your head and like back into the real world a little bit.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that because I know, Mike, I think you were the person who kind of introduced like the quarterly breakdown, like for how you kind of tackle things.
Yeah.
So it's refreshing to hear, how you kind of broke that down because, like you said, it's kind of a daily thing, and I'm also, and I know Mike is the same way. Like we live by our calendar. And
Mm,
so it's one of those things
yes.
where you don't want to like oversaturate your calendar where it becomes so, anxious, but like if this is my focus time, this is my focus time. If this is my time to breathe and relax, scroll on social media, like that's that time, or like this is my time to get work done. But then even when you look at it on a macro level, like you were saying, like, all right, we'll take it quarterly. This is what I know I got to knock out this quarter, and this is what I got to get done. So appreciate you sharing that. Mike, it looked
Of
like you had something to
course.
add, man. I'm sorry if I cut
Nah,
you off.
I would just empathizing because going through something similar, going through the 21 day fast, and for me, I'm doing the select, and some people are like, well, why are you doing the select? And I'm just like, for me, sometimes my relationship with food is not necessarily indulging, right? I think for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually, I indulge too much in TV. I also
Mm,
like social media and just things that sometimes brings distractions whenever I'm trying to get clarity from God. And I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and one of the things they said is it was from Kevin Gates. He was talking about how when he wants clarity, when he needs something from God, or he wants some direction on how to move forward. For him, the fasting period is helpful, and a lot of people don't necessarily understand that. For me, I can say when I am fasting, I feel like that's when I'm more vulnerable because
mm,
I'm not necessarily engaged in my distractions, but I'm more so alert, and I'm like, wow. I didn't know I was up against all these things. And so now that I'm praying more, and now that I'm being more mindful, and I actually have the time to, because I have sacrificed some things that brought me joy, to be able to get deeper and grow my relationship with God. And I love it, but at the same time, I can tell a shift in my mindset, my
mm.
tolerance. And it's not easy because I am looking at, like, this whole week I'm doing straight juices and no meat, no other products. And so it's completely, a lot of people don't understand it, and it's not for me to explain to them why I'm doing this. But at the end of the
Mhm.
day, I
Mhm.
know the purpose of that. And I was talking to Gandhi about that, and so I understand where you're coming from. It's a struggle, and but I do believe it is worth it in the long run. 100%.
Absolutely. I 1000% agree. Being present. That's what fasting is all about. It's about being present. And I think we know a lot of people that live their lives in the past. And
Hmm.
then there's some people that I feel like goes less talked about. I'm one of these people that lives consistently in the future. It's like everything is about what I have to do next and nothing.
Mhm.
It's so hard to just be in the present. And as a society, we have an issue with escapism. Everybody want to be
Mm,
somewhere else. Everybody want to
hmm.
go somewhere else. Nobody wants to be where they are, me
Everybody
included.
wanted
Um,
everybody wanted to be an adult until you became an adult. You're like, oh, this is, oh,
You
I,
know what I mean? Like
yeah.
my friends that
Mhm.
know me, I got a travel bug. I'm the first one to put a credit card, to put a flight on my credit card. But it's because as a society, we always want to be somewhere else. We have like grass is greener syndrome. We always think that like somewhere else is better than where we are, and
Yep.
like even mentally, like that's really like a thing. So getting rid of our distractions and like being present, it's an act of defiance, like in this day and age, because it's so easy to just pretend to be somewhere else. Be that either through social media, through TV and film, actually getting up and going, as we all move higher in like our socioeconomic status and stuff like that, the ability to actually just
Mhm.
get up and leave. But your problems, they go find you. They'll be right where you left them. So
Absolutely.
Mhm.
that's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I received that from both of y'all. So thank you for sharing. But we do want to start, we really want to start this conversation. Of course, this whole thing is about you. but and your growth and your story. But when we speak about your story, you have a doctorate, you got PhD behind your name.
They did.
And that is not something that I would say it's not common to see many Black folks having PhD behind their name. And so when we see it, I'm like, I was telling you when we were at the conference, like, we're going to applaud it. Like, it's amazing, right? And so I'm curious to start off, being a first generation college student, what led you down this path? And then more so when you start thinking about challenges, what were some of those things that you faced along your journey as you were pursuing this route?
Thank you. Well, as to not disrespect my mother and father, I am not a first generation college student.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm a first generation American college student, which did pose its own challenges because not my parents not having gone to school in the United States, like that did do a lot. It was like FAFSA time, and they were like FAFSA, huh? Like, you know what I mean? But both my parents did go to college. My dad has several master's degrees. My mother has a PhD, as well, and so that they were my models.
mhm.
I'm Cameroonian American, so it was you're going to school, and that's the end of the conversation. We're not talking about anything else. You're going to go to school, but at the same time, I owe almost all of my success right now to my parents. So they were huge motivators, in me choosing to go to college. Uh, Honestly, God is gonna steer you to where He wants you to go. My whole origin story,
Absolutely.
my whole
Mm.
origin story is like African household. By the time I turned 16, I'm the oldest child. I'm the only daughter. Yeah, those of y'all that are listening, y'all can do the math. And by the time I turned 16, I was ready to go. I was like, I can't deal with y'all no more. I'm done. I've had it. Like, when you're a teenager, you think your parents are the worst people in the world, and
Mhm.
little do you know. Um, but so I went to Delaware State University simply because it was the school that offered me the most scholarship money. My parents made that equation very simple. They were like, wherever you apply to, wherever gives you the most money, that's where you're going. A plus B equals C, done. And so I ended up going to Del State, but I loved it. It was an HBCU. I had the best time. I couldn't have envisioned myself anywhere but Delaware State. I did that degree in 3 years. I was lucky enough I did some college credits in high school, and then I went to Delaware State with some college credits, and then I took summer classes. And really, that came out of necessity. My little brother is 2 years younger than me, but because I skipped sixth grade, he was exactly 3 grades behind me. And so what would have been my fourth year in college would have been his first year in college. And my mom straight up told me, I think it was like my sophomore year or something like that. She was like, yeah, we can't afford to send your brother to a 4 year school at the same time as you, because while I had all tuition and fees paid for, my parents were still paying for my room and board. Um, so my mom was like, "No, it's fine," because my little brother wanted to play college football. My mom was like, "No, it's fine. He's just gonna have to go to a community college. Like, no college football for you. Like, it just is what it is. It's not your fault. You were born second. Oh well." And I was like, "Nah, I can't let that happen." So I hustled to graduate in 3 years so my little brother could go to and just graduated from Delaware Valley University. Um, and then after that, I made a deal with my mom. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to school for math and science because that's what you want. And then I'm going to pursue my lifelong dream of being a Broadway actress after. Gonna move back to Jersey, live in your house, eat your food for free. And I was gonna be like a drama teacher at a charter school in Brooklyn, I think was the job offer that I got. And I was like, yeah, great. But when I graduated high school, I was 19 because I like graduated early. And my mom was like, you're a child. Like, you're not going out into the world on your own, even though they'd sent me to Cameroon by myself when I was a child. But anyway, so you're going to graduate school. And I had applied to graduate schools because I like had become interested in it, but by the time like around, I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. So I'd done the GRE, I had applied to schools, I'd gotten into one school, a school, the University of Iowa. That's the only school I got into. Because I pivoted from natural resources to engineering with no background. So my mom was like, you better go to Iowa because you ain't staying here. And so that's how I ended up at the University of Iowa pursuing my PhD because my mother told me to. I know that's an incredibly uninspiring story, but it's the truth. My African mama was like, you finna keep going to school. So I did. And then I would say that the first year I was there for my parents and I was incredibly resentful. It was super hard transitioning from the East Coast to the Midwest. I moved there right as campaign season was at its height, August of 2018, for the midterm elections after Trump was elected. So politically, it was just not a great landscape. And then, Iowa. So there was just a bunch of things compounding. My first semester, I'd always gotten good grades. My first semester, I was on academic probation. They were like, girl, you got to get your grades up or we're kicking you out. And it was just a mess. Everything about my first year was a mess. But I think after that first year and all of its difficulties, I looked myself in the mirror that like summer of 2019 and I was like, okay, are we going to do this thing or are we not going to do this thing? Because if we don't want to do it, at this point, you don't have to do it. You can go home. They're going to yell. They're going to scream. They're going to say, they're going to call you everything but a child of God, but they're not going to kick you out. Like, like you can pivot from this. But then it was about, I want to prove to myself that I can do this. And then after this, I know that nobody will have anything else to say to me. Like once I'm Dr. Bannavti, no one will have anything else to say to me. And from that point on, I can forever like do whatever I wanted. And my PhD journey was so hard, but I'm so glad I did it.
Mm.
And now it's over.
Mm. What was hard about it?
What was hard about it? I was in a racist state. At a school that treated me less than amazingly. Again, at such a like deeply political time between like Trump's presidency, Black Lives Matter, the pandemic. Like the 4 years that I was there was probably like the worst 4 years for young woman academic to be there like at one time. Like it was really, I think it was just magnified by everything that was happening politically at the time. And it was just such a sensitive like transition time for me. Like I was doing my PhD as I was coming into adulthood. I went there at 19 and I came back right before I turned 24. So it was like all of the safety net that I had on the East Coast, family, friends. I moved there with nothing. My mama came drop me off, child. I dropped her off at the airport same day. She was like, I'm not staying here to unpack all this stuff. Good luck. So that made it hard. That made it hard, especially not being able to come back and see my family as often when COVID hit. All of that made it hard. And doing a PhD is hard. It's hard. Like learning how to do research and all of that. It's so difficult, but it is not impossible.
Absolutely, and a lot of things that you spoke on, I was able to relate. Um, I went to Hopkins straight out of NC State, and for me, that was the first time being in a position where I was culturally shocked at what other people who looked like me, what they had to encounter. And a lot of
Mm,
people, I struggled to make Josh can tell you, I struggled to make that decision to actually move. It was literally I was employed full time, straight out of undergrad, had a job, was enrolled in actual another grad program. And then it was like I woke up and had an epiphany, and I literally put in my
mm,
notice saying I quit. I'm moving to Baltimore. I moved to Baltimore on Friday and started classes on Tuesday of that Labor Day weekend. And it was a journey. And I'm not gonna go into the politics about Hopkins, but understanding how like coming from a rural perspective as a Black male and then having to find a way to navigate what it's like to be in a Black city, but navigate the
mm,
whiteism, the elitism, and all these other isms in a city where you don't even have a relationship with the same people that you're doing research on. It was very hard for me to navigate that. So I completely understand the position where you're coming from, and moving forward. And I haven't started the journey yet, nor have I made an announcement. So I'm not going to speak more about that. But I have been doing a lot of research on it, and I do know now I'm much more mature and able to navigate some of those systems. Now having work experience and able to, have done research before and able to continue what I want to study based on my agenda, not my faculty advisor agenda. But I want to rewind a little bit because you talked about how some of the challenges that you experience, which I do want to unpack that in a sense because you experienced many challenges, but the research that you did brought much success, and not only for you, but also for the communities that you were serving in. So, can you talk to us a little bit about your interest in wanting to study PCB? What is that, and how did that inform your research decision?
yeah. So to tell you why I wanted to study PCBs, I have to go back to tell you why I picked environmental science in the first place. Um, I chose environmental science because when I had a physics teacher back in Cameroon who was like super mean to me, and I took a vow that day at like 10 years old. I was like, I'm never taking physics again. So then when high school came around, I went to a very small school. And so it was, you know, you take bio, you take chem, then you take physics. That was just what everybody did. Um, but my year, my former bio teacher was like, wait, we're teaching this new class, AP Environmental Science. So if you take that, you don't have to take physics. And I was like, sign me up. So I took AP Environmental Science, and that was the first time that I learned about so much about environmental injustice, about the idea that like I knew about the health disparities between like Black people and other people. I knew about like obviously the physical like redlining and stuff like that. I didn't know it was called redlining, but you know, I could see
Hmm.
we live over here and they live over there, like that sort of
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
But I did not understand the role that the environment, the contamination of our environment compared to theirs, and the lack of willing to clean up pollution that may have been, you know, put there inadvertently. I didn't realize how big of a role that played in our negative health outcomes, in our negative mental health outcomes. You know, when you talk about having food deserts, not having any green spaces, not, you know, all of those things. And then I decided, I was like, oh, I want to find out more about that. So when my mom told me that I could only go to school for STEM and I couldn't go to school for musical theater, like I had originally wanted to, immediately I knew that environmental science was the only science I was gonna do. So I got into environmental science to be a people's environmentalist. That was always my
Hmm.
goal. I was like, the trees are cool, the animals we need them. You know what I mean? Because I am omnivore. I like pets. I don't have no pets, but I like the animals. They need protection. We gotta protect the animal babies. However, I want to be an environmentalist to help people. And when I went to undergrad, you know, I didn't realize that getting a degree in natural resources and environmental science was going to be a lot of the plants, the animals, not a lot of like people stuff. So when I made the decision to go to graduate school, I was like, no, 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 I'm only going to do this. I'm only going to commit more time to this field of study if there is a direct effect on people, and specifically people that are socioeconomically disadvantaged. Like I know that we are affected by this differently, and I didn't learn about any environmentalists that looked like me. I didn't learn about any environmentalists, anybody that caused environmental change that were Black and brown people, except for the people in those communities that were like protesting to like clean up their own communities. But I didn't see anybody like in the ivory tower, like reaching out and doing that. So I wanted to be that person. Plus, I knew that our communities had an inherent distrust of academia, and you know, just a lot of those like super white spaces, and it's totally understandable because I mean we've been done dirty throughout history. But my idea was kind of like, okay, maybe if I'm attached to a project with impact, then people, the community members would be more likely to trust us,
Hmm.
the people that, you know, are partnering with them to do the project. And so that's all I wanted to do, be some sort of like environmental liaison superwoman sort of situation. So how I landed on my particular project, got a call to do something about muscles, and I was like, I'm not doing that. And then which was very, very bold for somebody with no engineering credentials that only got accepted to this one school, and I needed funding because I wasn't gonna pay for this. So if they had said to me like, nah, that's the only project we got, I would have been studying muscles. But hallelujah, thank the Lord, my advisors cared enough about me liking my project when I explained to them what I just explained to you all about like wanting to be a people's environmentalist, etc. Then they came back to me, they were like, okay, what about PCBs in schools? I said, nah, now you're talking about language. So that was kind of how I got involved with that project. For the people that don't know, PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, are a toxin. They're an organic compound, and they are man-made. They were made by the company Monsanto from the 1930s to 1977 when they were outlawed. Production ceased in 1979, and they are carcinogenic, meaning they cause cancer. They are also neurotoxic. They are endocrine disruptors. They're just really, 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 really terrible. And PCBs are a persistent organic pollutant. So right now, PFAS is really popular. You might have heard of those. It's kind of in the same class. So these forever chemicals, that's also how they're colloquially referred to. And so PCBs exist a lot indoors because they are a persistent compound. They were placed as mixtures in like caulking and adhesive and all those other sorts of things, and put inside buildings. And specifically, homes get renovated much more quickly than schools do. Schools, you build a school to last most of the time. And so people were using these PCB, these toxic compounds, to build these schools, like in the building materials to build the schools. About 46% of the schools that exist in the United States today were built during that PCB era of 1930 to 1977. So that just tells you, like, it's a lot. It's a lot of schools. And because they are persistent organic pollutants and they're constant emitters, they also have a grasshopper effect, so they can bounce from one source to another source if there's like some sort of like air commotion in the room. The only way that you're gonna get rid of them is if you go in and you take them out. Of course, ventilation is a huge help, but we all know it's expensive to ventilate. Hello, it's the winter time. We know our heating and our air costs a lot of money. And so the schools, it would also cost a lot of money for them. And really where it gets into be a socioeconomic issue is the fact that the removal of these compounds is expensive. And there's no federal mandate to remove them from the air. People were always worried about them in the diet, but less in the air. But now we know that inhalation is of equal or greater exposure route of PCBs than diet, and they biomagnify. So obviously, bioaccumulate. I'm sorry. So that's why we care about them in schools, because the kids get exposed. You're gonna, as I said, they're everywhere. So you're gonna keep getting exposed as you get older. So the younger that exposure starts, the more that the issue can compound, as you get older. And sometimes they can metabolize to things that are even worse. So I know that was kind of a very all over the place explanation, and not nearly as cohesive as my papers, which you all should go check out. But that was basically where the issue started. Poorer schools don't have money to remove them, so I was looking for cheaper ways to remove them, because they have the same right to clean air that affluent white people do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you good. I receive everything that you were saying, and this is kind of personal to me, because just what, Gandhi, November, it was
Yep.
NC State made an announcement. It was NC State, the College of Education, the same college that I graduated from. They closed their doors because many staff members were diagnosed with cancer due to PCB being found. And for years and years, they have said, we think testing needs to be done, but I'm not administrator, so I can't tell you that it wasn't done, but based on what I'm hearing from articles I have read, much wasn't done about it. And so now you have all these people who have gotten sick and have been diagnosed with cancer. And now I'm sure a class action lawsuit may be in the picture. But I wonder, this is not something that this is not general knowledge, right? And when I was doing more research about it, and you touched on it a little bit, but I wonder if you can speak to it, because from my understanding, PCB it is made from like it and help me out. So a lot of materials that build, like you use to build like apartments, houses, vinyl and different things like that sometimes have PCB in it. And because they have changed like how they are structuring and building homes, some of them no longer have that use that material. But I wonder if you can speak a little bit more speak more about that, and how can people maybe not necessarily test their air, but be more aware and take action if they need to, in order to prevent serious illness.
Yeah. Wow. So much there. One, to the first part, that wasn't really a question, but to comment on which we're talking about with the lawsuit. There are a series of class action lawsuits that are going on across the United States right now. I believe it's Washington State just won 847 million. Don't quote me on that number, but I'm pretty sure it was in the millions. It was in a lot of money against Bayer. So Monsanto was bought out by the Bayer company right now. And yeah, because same thing, teachers were saying, even getting cancer. Teachers that have been teaching in these schools for 30 something years. That's like, you know, what we're talking about. So yeah, definitely is like a very, very real issue to talk about, like it being in people's homes. Well, first of all, if your home was built um somewhere between like the mid 1930s and like 1979, some studies are even saying like 1981, but I know 1979 was when like production ceased, like on paper. um then you may be at risk for having PCBs in your building materials. Now, the nice thing is that as time moves forward, as I mentioned before, a lot of people renovate homes, right? So, you know, like PCBs in your window caulking probably isn't a thing anymore because you probably don't have the same windows since, you know, 1977, stuff like that. However, PCBs in the foundation of like your floor, like the adhesive that was used to like put your carpet or your hardwood or whatever it is like to your floor, if that has not been redone since then, that might be a thing. There are papers published on PCBs in homes. My colleague Jacob Yankee published in 2018 was his paper on colorants. I forgot exactly what the year was, but him and Nicholas Herkert, who's a professor, they both published levels of PCBs in homes. So people can kind of look and see, okay, homes that were built around the same time as mine, do they have the same materials in their homes as I do? Those are kind of some things to look at. I'm not a toxicologist, and my advisor trained me over 5 years to say that to people. I'm not a toxicologist. So I can't say to you, like, oh, this amount causes cancer, because there's 209 different types of PCBs. Each of them have different, like, kind of exposure risk, if you will. Some of them, like the dioxin-like, they believe to be more toxic than non-dioxin-like, and you know, all the things. So there's a lot of nuance there. So I can't say, oh, if you have this in your home, then you're at risk for cancer by this
Right.
much. I can't make those sorts of conclusions here. But we do know that they're bad, and we do know that they're pervasive, and we do know that they are very, very widely spread. So if that is happening to you, if you have any questions, I would suggest you to read the literature out there. A lot of it now is becoming open access, which is like, yay. My most recent paper on PCBs in a university building is open access, etc. But at the end of every paper, even if you just see the abstract, at the end of every paper, there is a corresponding author and their email is there. So if you have any questions, I would email that corresponding author of the paper that you're reading. And professors like to answer people, especially like when it's like community members, like community, like public. Well, these professors from the University of Iowa do. So if you see a University of Iowa paper, I know for a fact that Carrie Hornbuckle will answer your email. Some professors are shady now. My advisor is not shady. If you send her an email, she will actually answer it, and I will obviously answer emails as well.
That's awesome. And I want to kind of add, because you talked a lot, not only just on the research part of it, but you had mentioned also earlier on the question around how, especially for communities of color, it's tough because like the funding can be a challenge. So I wonder if we could stay on that for a second and just quickly talk through, you know, some of the challenges that you're seeing, not only as you're talking about the things that you're doing to impact the community, but also when you are starting to think about that funding and going into schools, like what are some of the challenges that y'all are facing as you are trying to, you know, shift from, you know, we had PCBs, we want them gone. This is the importance of why we need them gone. Like, can you talk through some of those challenges really quickly and how y'all are kind of overcoming that?
Yeah. Ooh, this is a big issue. So in my dissertation, I have like this flow chart. So I'm gonna, if you see me, it's because I'm envisioning boxes in front of me. But basically, it's a two-tailed problem. So if you start up here with like lower income public schools kind of being the broader thing. So the first thing is that, as I mentioned, that hotspot for when PCBs were being produced and added to building materials, excuse me, older buildings, lower income public school districts have a greater frequency of older buildings. So they're more likely to be exposed for those reasons. You know, affluent schools, they rebuild the schools more often, they renovate the schools more often. So because our schools are older, that poses us at a greater risk for PCB exposure. Then on the other side of things, as we said, testing is expensive. Testing and removal is very expensive. Just in terms of testing, one sample can cost anywhere from $100 to $1,000, depending on how comprehensive you want the sample to be, how many of those different 209 congeners you're testing for. Well, let's just say you get the money for testing, right? Okay, so now you actually test, and if there is PCBs, but you don't have the money to do the remediation, which is the more expensive part of it, well, now you have a huge PR issue, and we've seen this happen in the news before, where now you're saying, oh, there's PCBs in the schools, but you don't have the money to remove it. There's no federal assistance or state assistance in most states, except for Vermont, because it isn't mandatory to test or remove them. So the government isn't helping. So then it falls on the school district. Parents and teachers are going to be pissed if they find out that there's a toxin in their school the school isn't removing. But a lot of these school districts can barely stay above what they can't pay teachers. You know what I mean? So not to talk about like removing PCBs. There are things that they are federally mandated not to have, like chemicals that they're federally mandated not to have in their schools, and they're not meeting those requirements, right? So a lot of people, kind of getting towards the end of my dissertation, but I'm going to bring it up here because it's a good spot for it. A lot of people are like, okay, we want testing to be mandatory. We want removal to be mandatory. A lot of my work, if you read a lot of the conclusions, it is swinging towards that politic that testing and removal should be mandatory. But at the same time, whenever you start to talk about legality, there has to be somebody to enforce the lack of compliance. And then now we're talking about policing, right? Or litigation, which is another form of policing. And so whenever you're like, okay, we want to make these things mandatory to protect our kids, but if they don't have the money to meet that environmental standard, well, now they're the same people that are going to get punished. How are you going to punish them? With a fine? Okay, so now they're going to owe more money on top of the money that they didn't have to fix the problem in the first, right? And then it's like,
It's
okay,
like a cycle.
let's just say exactly, and it just keeps going. So it's either bad PR issue, or like the school ends up getting punished even more. It just, there's no good outcome if the money isn't provided to help solve this issue. So that is really where we see the inequity with lower income school districts, in particular lower income public school districts.
Wow, that was a mouthful. Wow, that was a
Yeah.
mouthful, because there's so much to unpack when you talk about funding, and then you talk about accountability, because we can say we're going to do this, but then if your demand is 1,000, but you only have 3 people to support the demand, you're not fixing anything, right? And so, wow. So,
And
go,
oh,
no, go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I've talked. Part of my dissertation was to do interviews with some people from the community,
Hmm.
um, and without saying too much, because like I said, there's a lot of active lawsuits going on. Um, Unfortunately, this country is doing what it always does, which is depending on litigation to fund solving this issue. So these individual states or school districts are, suing, and they're winning, and we thank God for that. But what happens if the damages aren't large enough? The places where you're winning these millions and millions of dollars are the places where people were dying. You know what I mean? Like, so it's how do we solve the issue? How do we get the money to even litigate in the first place, without serious harm being caused first? And so that's also part of the problem. Like, even the states that are doing something about it, they're depending on litigation to fund this issue. And I get it, like, make the pollutant pay for the pollution makes a lot of sense. But harm is being caused in the interim, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
really helping solve the problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to add, and I kind of want to shift things. I want to shift things a little bit more on you, right? I'm curious, when you think about all the things that you're doing, from research to going, making sure that you're having an impact in many of the communities that you serve. How are you bringing in some of your personal values into ensuring that you're improving the quality of life for these communities? But also, I would like to add too, how are you also maintaining a positive growth mindset through all of this? Because just hearing your story throughout this episode, from your upbringing to you having to navigate being a student at the University of Iowa, to now being at the forefront of this issue and trying to make sure that people are breathing in clean air, that they're not exposed to cancerous things to their body. But how are you keeping all of that together as you're navigating your own process?
Am I keeping it together, Josh?
I don't know. Maybe, maybe not.
um, I have the best support system in the entire world. My friends are amazing. My family is amazing. They have supported me day in and day out. And you know, Black people, we can't do this work, specifically research work, nonprofit work, um, any of the work, but like specifically the work that doesn't get compensated very well financially. We can't do that without the support of our friends and family, right? So that's very real, and I would say that that's a lot of what's kind of like carried me through this. My personal morals have everything to do with my career choice, everything. Um, as I said before, I'm Christian. There's a Bible verse that goes, "So you do unto the least of these that you've done unto me," and I take that to heart. Like, our country is only as good as how the poorest of us are doing. We are only. I feel like, say this to be dramatic, but like specifically like when I'm really in my research bag, I feel like my air is only as clean as the people that, right? And that's the thing about like being where I'm from and then doing this work, because I grew up in the suburbs, with like the urban suburbs, not like the Montclair suburbs, more like the rougher suburbs. And my high school was built before 1977. You know what I mean? And has not been renovated very well since. And my little brother still attends that high school. And so, the issue is so much closer to home for us. Um, and so my personal experiences, my faith, they have everything to do with the career choice that I have, because I know it's only a couple of paychecks that aren't getting cash before I'm right back in my hometown, or somewhere that's more socioeconomically disadvantaged. And then it's only a couple of years before my kids end up in those schools. And you know what I mean? Like, yes, now I'm Dr. Bannavti, and like now I have a certain amount of insurance that won't be me, but there's nothing to say that it can't be me, or that if I or my parents had made a different set of choices, that wouldn't have been me. So I think something that motivates me to do my work, and to continue to focus my work on helping those that are most environmentally disadvantaged, is the fact that like I am not that separate from the environmentally disadvantaged. I know that feeling. And it could be me. It's not even like it could be me. It has been me, and it could be me again, because that's how capitalism is set up. So yeah, all of those things are motivators for me doing what I'm doing.
Do you see yourself continuing the work that you're currently doing after your postdoc fellowship?
Oh, hard questions. Hard questions. Um, no,
Mm,
I don't. For a couple of really superficial reasons. I'm over lab chemistry, so that's
mm,
part of it. I just do not want to be at a bench, titrating, diluting, um, doing gas chromatography. I'm done with it. So for those reasons, no. Also, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think I need to take a break from academia. We've seen in recent days what's happened to
mhm,
Claudine Gay,
mhm,
and my soror, rest in peace.
mhm,
It just,
mhm,
I've known for a long time this space isn't for me. And throughout my academic journey, I've gone to more and more prestigious universities. I started at Delaware State, which is prestigious as hell in my mind. But it's a small school, it's a public HBCU, it's incredibly underfunded. And then I went to the University of Iowa, and I was able to accomplish a lot of success there, even outside of academics, like in student government. And like I spoke a lot to the Board of Regents, to several political leaders, because I was the president of graduate professional student government there. And then now being here at MIT, Delaware State was the only place where I felt protected.
mhm,
It was the only place where I felt a part of the community in a very real way, and not some sort of outsider. Just the other day, y'all. Just the other day, I had an interaction with a lady. We got off the train at the same time. Um, we were both walking in the same direction, but I was walking behind her. This was like an older white lady, and she just so happened to be going into my building. So, because she goes, I don't scan in because I just hold it. I just grab the door, because I'm not that far behind her. And I noticed her like starting to like clutch her purse and like move to the side. We're walking up these stairs, we walk up these stairs. She's standing right there. She's waiting for me. My office is right here. So I scan in, but I look back up at her and she's looking at me like this entire time she thought I was just like following her. Like I was chasing her. Like there was nothing in her brain that was like, oh, maybe she works here too. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. I know that you still face a grave amount of that in industry. I know that. Um, but if I'm going face ish like that, I'd rather get paid for it properly.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna stack my money, get myself a house, uh, put some money in the college fund for these imaginary kids that don't exist yet. But I do think I will pivot back to academia eventually. And I still want to continue the work of doing environmental justice in industry. I'm very focused on responsible sourcing, looking at maybe doing some supply chain stuff, some consulting stuff. But yeah, that work is never going to end. But I think the academic side of it for me may be coming to a close sometime soon.
Mm. I respect that and I hear that, and I also want to send my condolences to the family of Dr. Is Candia Bailey correct? Yeah.
I want if
Yeah.
you looked it up and that's right, then that's
Yeah,
right.
I want the
I don't want to say wrong.
pronunciation. Yeah, it is. Dr. Candia Bailey. She was the VP for, I want to say, student affairs. I will encourage everyone to go and just read about her story and what she had to encounter before her last moments here on Earth. And what we are talking about now is real. And a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that, especially for Black women and what they have to endure on college campus, not even just college campuses, in positions where they are oftentimes questioned. It's a time where we really got to stand up for one another. And, it goes back to the founding purpose of this platform is to be able to create that voice for people that look like us. And, and not just for people that look like us, because sometimes you do have people in positions that are trying to be advocate and allies, but I have to really scan you to make sure that's your actual agenda. And you're just not trying to win a ticket to the cookout, because I don't give out those tickets just freely. And
Hey,
so
come
uh,
on now.
yeah, I just want to make that be known just in case we do have, I do know she was part of the NC State community as well, once upon a time. And so I just want to make that be known. But before, Gandhi, before we wrap up, I think you want to share something or add something too.
No, man, go ahead, man. You rolling with it. I'm rolling with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're trying something new, and this particular question was not sent to you, so I got something that I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. So the question is, would you rather continually embrace challenges and potential setbacks, or would you rather consistently avoid challenges to maintain a more predictable and comfortable life?
Um, I mean, I like comfort. So if I got to pick, I guess in theory it would be that, but I know it wouldn't be that because, as I said before, I've chosen to be a Christian, which means that I've chosen a life of baptism by fire. So there will always be challenges. There will always be challenges to make me better. The best version of myself is on the other end of whatever obstacle is before me. And so that encourages me to continue to do that. And on the topic of like a growth mindset, you don't grow unless you're challenged. You don't
Mm-hmm.
grow unless there's something that you have to overcome. It sucks. That's the worst part of being an adult. Like we always pray for sunny days, but we know that like our strength is found when it's raining. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't make sense. Like we want comfort so badly, but even now my prayers sound different. Now it's like, Lord, give me the patience to endure. I'm not asking you to take the storm away from me because I want to be the version of myself that is on the other side of this storm. Just give me the patience to endure. Give me the patience to not turn back to my distraction. Ooh, full circle moment. Not turn back to my distractions when things are getting hard. You know what I mean? But I want to be changed for the better. So that means bring the challenges on.
I received that. I received that.
I received that as well. Well, Doc, first off, we appreciate you being on the show with us today. We unpacked a ton. But as we do wrap this up, I want to ask you one final question, and that is for our audience, as we look back at your story and we reflect on all the things that you talked about, what is one thing that you want to leave folks? If you could summarize it or just drop a quick gem about, whether they're going throughout their own journey, they're going throughout their own obstacles, like what is one thing that you want to leave folks today with as we kind of wrap this thing up?
My verse for the year is Proverbs 21:5, which says, "Good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts leads to poverty." And I am taking that with me to the bone, and I want everybody else to take that with them, because I think whether you're Christian or not, it's true. Like I think that's just like factual. Um, and yeah, you have to plan well, and you have to work hard. The Kardashian meme of like nobody wants to work these days. Like it's not true. It's not true. And we can say a lot of things from like her position and that comment. But it kind of is true in that people are still working very hard, but all of us want a life that's easier. And I acknowledge that. And I am one of those people. I like nice things. I will never tell anybody that I don't like nice things. However, there's a path to getting that, right? And when you try and take shortcuts, not shortcuts for efficiency, but hasty shortcuts, as the verse says, you lose. You lose in the end. So take your time. It is only the 21st day of the year. Everything will get better.
I love it. I love it. Well, I wanna add again, thank you for being with us here today. For the folks who do want to get in contact with you, how can people reach you? Whether they want to read, any of the things that you have a lot of stuff out there that from a research standpoint. So how can people get like connected with you? How can they read up on what you've been researching, or your current status of what's going on? Like how can folks reach out to you?
Yeah, if you want fun Moala, you can follow me on Instagram at Moala the artist. If you want serious academic Moala, add me on LinkedIn. Actually, add me on LinkedIn anyway because I really need my network to go up. I have like very few connections, so I need more. And I answer my DMs always. So hit me up on LinkedIn. It's Dr. Moala Bannavti. If you search that, I will be the first one to come up. And other than that, I don't know. When I have an announcement of another way to reach me, I'll hit y'all back up.
We love it, and we will definitely get it out to our audience. But again, thank you for being here with us today. It's refreshing, it's enlightening to hear your story and some of the things that you've got going on. And so we thank you for being on the show, and I know our audience is going to really pick up a lot of the gems that you dropped today. But as we close out, y'all, I want to go back to what you said, Doc, around not taking the storm away. Wherever you're at in your process, wherever you are at, even if it's these first few days in the new year, you may have some sunny days, you may also have some days that are a little bit more cloudy, but at the end of the day, sustain. And there are going to be people who you're going to be able to lean on. There are going to be places that you're going to want to go. But at the end of the day, even in some of those difficult moments, at some point, the sun has got to shine. And so, as we always say on this platform, it is the power of a growth mindset, and it always starts with you.